The world feared her. Only the humans saw beyond the monster and dared to touch her. Commander Joshua Sterling despised the idea of visiting Nexus 9. The mining colony had a well-deserved reputation for being a cesspool of moral decay, where anything could be bought for the right price. As his sleek black combat suit absorbed the harsh rays of the binary stars overhead, he couldn't shake the feeling that this assignment would be more trouble than it was worth. "Welcome to Nexus 9, Commander," chirped a diminutive, green-skinned alien with bulbous eyes. "I'm Crix, your liaison. The mining consortium is most pleased to have a representative from Earth Defense Force here to discuss our mutual interests." Joshua grunted noncommittally, his dark beard and mustache failing to hide his scowl. The metallic plates of his armor clicked softly as they adjusted to his movements, compensating for the planet's slightly higher gravity. He'd left his helmet in the shuttle. He preferred to look people in the eye when they tried to lie to him. "Let's skip the pleasantries," he said. "Show me the mining operation so we can get this over with." Crix's smile faltered slightly. "Of course, Commander. Right this way. Though, perhaps you'd be interested in seeing something rather unique first. We have a special attraction that few outsiders get to witness." Joshua's scowl deepened. "I'm not here for entertainment." "Oh, but this is quite extraordinary," Crix insisted, wringing his hands. "We've managed to capture one of the last surviving Titans. Quite docile now, I assure you. A magnificent specimen." Something in Crix's tone set off warning bells in Joshua's mind. "Titans? You mean the giant humanoids from the Andromeda arm? I thought they were extinct." Nearly so," Crix agreed too eagerly, "which makes our specimen all the more valuable. Would you like to see her?" Her. The word hung in the air like a lead weight. Joshua knew he should decline and stick to his mission parameters. But something, curiosity, instinct, or perhaps fate itself, made him nod. "Show me." Crix led him through a series of winding tunnels, deeper into the heart of the mining complex. The walls were rough-hewn stone, reinforced with metal supports, and the air grew progressively cooler. Finally, they emerged into a vast chamber that made Joshua's breath catch in his throat. Massive columns of black metal rose from floor to ceiling, and between them, bound by energy chains that hummed with barely contained power, was a being that defied description. She was humanoid, but scaled to impossible proportions, easily 25 feet tall. Her skin was a deep violet color that seemed to shimmer in the harsh industrial lighting. But it was her eyes that captured Joshua's attention. Pure white with the faintest hint of lavender, lacking pupils or irises, yet somehow conveying an intelligence that pierced straight out through him. She was also completely nude, her long black hair flowing around her like a dark waterfall, providing only the barest suggestion of modesty. Joshua felt his face flush with anger rather than embarrassment. This wasn't a specimen. This was imprisonment, slavery. "Magnificent, isn't she?" Crix said, misreading Joshua's reaction. "We found her in a derelict ship at the edge of the system. Took quite a bit of effort to subdue her, but the profit potential is enormous. Many collectors would pay." "Leave us!" Joshua cut him off, his voice hard as steel. What?" Crix blinked in confusion. "I said leave. Now that's an order." "But Commander, she's dangerous. We can't leave you alone with..." Joshua turned to face the smaller alien, letting every ounce of his combat experience show in his expression. "I've faced down Kraken warships and survived 3 first contact wars. I think I can handle myself. Leave." Crix opened his mouth to protest again, then thought better of it. He scurried away, leaving Joshua alone with the imprisoned Titan. As soon as Crix's footsteps faded, Joshua approached the bound giantess slowly, his hands held open at his sides. The Titan's eyes tracked his movement, but she made no aggressive gestures. Up close, he could see faint markings on her skin, patterns that might have been ceremonial tattoos or natural features of her species. "I'm Commander Joshua Sterling," he said softly, maintaining eye contact. "And I don't believe for a second that you're just some mindless beast they caught." The Titan tilted her head slightly, studying him with those luminous eyes. Then, to his complete lack of surprise, she spoke. Her voice was deep and melodious, with an accent he couldn't quite place. "You are different from the others who come to stare," she said. "They look at me with greed or fear. You look at me with anger, but not directed at me." Joshua nodded. "Because this is wrong. Your people were a space-faring civilization, not animals to be caged and displayed. Were, she agreed sadly. Past tense. As your small green friend said, I am among the last. I am called Andaria. Andaria, Joshua repeated. How long have they kept you here? Time becomes difficult to track in this place. Many cycles of your standard year, I think. She shifted slightly, causing the energy chains to crackle. Why have you come, Commander Joshua Sterling? Surely not just to speak kindly to a caged monster. You're not a monster, he said firmly. Then, following an impulse he couldn't quite explain, he stepped closer, well within reach if she chose to attack. May I? He gestured towards her leg, the closest part of her he could reach, and Daria's eyes widened slightly, but she nodded. Joshua reached out and placed his hand against her skin. It was warm and smooth, with a slight texture like finest silk. He felt a tremor run through her at the contact. It has been so long since anyone touched me with gentleness, she whispered. The moment was shattered by the sound of approaching footsteps and voices. Joshua stepped back reluctantly as Crix returned with several other aliens in mining consortium uniforms. Commander, I must insist we proceed with the inspection now, Crix said, shooting nervous glances between Joshua and Andaria. Of course, Joshua replied smoothly, his face once again an impassive mask. But as he turned to leave, he caught Andaria's eye one last time and gave her the slightest of nods. He had come to Nexus 9 to negotiate mining rights. But now he had a new mission, one that would change both their lives forever. Over the next few days, Joshua made a show of meticulously inspecting every aspect of the mining operation. His black combat suit sensors recorded everything. Guard rotations, security protocols, power grid layouts. But his thoughts constantly returned to the imprisoned Titan in the depths below. He found excuses to visit her chamber regularly, claiming to be concerned about the structural integrity of the support columns. The guards grew accustomed to his presence, becoming increasingly lax in their supervision. That suited Joshua perfectly. You return often, little warrior, Andaria said during one such visit, her melodious voice carrying a hint of amusement. The energy chains hummed softly as she shifted to face him. Do your people not have a saying about curiosity and felines? Joshua smiled, stroking his dark beard. We do. We also have sayings about doing what's right, regardless of the consequences. Ah, human nobility, she tilted her head, studying him with those mesmerizing white eyes. Your species is fascinating, so small yet so fearless. The others here cower and scurry. You stride in as though you own the chamber. Size isn't everything, Joshua replied with a roguish grin, earning a musical laugh from the giantess. Indeed not, though I must admit, you cut an impressive figure in that armor. Her gaze traveled appreciatively over his combat suit. The others wear loose robes or environmental suits. You dress like a warrior. I am a warrior. Joshua approached closer, lowering his voice. And I've noticed something about these chains. They're drawing power from the main grid, not an independent source, a significant vulnerability. Andaria's expression remained carefully neutral, but her eyes flickered with interest. Is that so? How careless of them. Almost as careless as leaving us alone so often. They've grown complacent. Joshua reached out to touch her leg, as had become their custom. But this time, his fingers traced one of the intricate patterns on her violet skin. These markings, they tell a story, don't they? A shiver ran through her massive frame. They mark significant moments in a Titan's life. Victories, losses, loves. Her voice softened on the last word. Though I never expected to find any of those things here. Joshua's hand stilled. Andaria, you need not say it. She gazed down at him with an expression that made his heart race. I feel it too. This connection between us. Impossible. Perhaps even foolish, but undeniable. I've never been one to let impossible odds stop me. Joshua moved closer, pressing his palm flat against her skin. And I've learned that the heart rarely cares about practical considerations. No, she agreed softly, it does not. But Joshua, what you plan is dangerous. If they catch you, they won't. Such confidence. She smiled, a sight that never failed to take his breath away. It makes me want to believe anything is possible. Their moment was interrupted by approaching footsteps. Joshua stepped back smoothly, resuming his inspection pose as a guard entered. "Commander Sterling, the consortium directors request your presence for the evening meal." "Of course," Joshua nodded professionally. "I'll be there shortly." After the guard left, he gave Andaria one last meaningful look. "Tomorrow night, the backup generators undergo routine maintenance. The power will fluctuate for exactly 3 minutes. Enough time for a Titan to break free?" Her eyes sparkled with mischief. "More than enough time for a warrior to disable some key systems," he smiled. "Rest well, Andaria. Tomorrow will be interesting." As Joshua strode away, his combat suit sensors continued gathering data, but his mind was filled with violet skin and luminous eyes, and the impossible dream of a future where a human and a Titan could forge their own destiny. That evening, in his temporary quarters, Joshua reviewed the facility's schematics one final time. His suits, aka, I had identified multiple escape routes and calculated optimal timing for each phase of the operation. Everything was in place for tomorrow night. A soft chime from his communicator interrupted his planning. A message from Earth Command. Routine status update request. Joshua composed a carefully worded response, omitting any mention of Andaria or his rescue plans. He knew there would be consequences for his actions, but some things were worth any price. He found himself thinking of the way Andaria looked at him, not with fear or revulsion at his small size, but with growing affection and trust. How her skin felt beneath his touch, warm and alive with subtle patterns that spoke of a rich cultural heritage. The way her voice softened when she spoke his name. Humans and Titans had never been enemies, but neither had they been allies. Their civilizations had developed in different arms of the galaxy, meeting only rarely through trade. Now, with her people nearly extinct, Andaria represented something precious. Not just the survival of her species, but the possibility of building bridges between their races. Joshua checked his weapons one last time before lying down to rest. Tomorrow would change everything. But as he drifted off to sleep, he smiled, knowing that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. In the depths below, Andaria too was preparing. She had been conserving her strength, carefully testing the limits of her bonds without alerting her captors. The energy chains were strong, but she had survived the fall of her civilization. She had endured years of captivity. She would not fail tomorrow, not when freedom was so close, and not when it meant leaving behind the first being in years to see her as more than a monster. The night passed slowly, each second bringing them closer to either triumph or disaster. But in the darkness, hope burned bright, fueled by a connection that defied explanation and transcended physical differences. The maintenance cycle was scheduled to begin at midnight local time. Joshua arrived at his usual inspection time, several hours earlier, to avoid arousing suspicion. But something felt off the moment he entered Andaria's chamber. The usual guards were absent, replaced by unfamiliar faces wearing professional-grade combat armor. Joshua's suit sensors detected active scanning sweeps. They were looking for something, or someone. Commander Sterling, Director Venn, the consortium's head of security, stepped out from behind one of the massive columns. The saurian scaled face was impossible to read, but his tone dripped with false courtesy. "How convenient that you've joined us. We were just discussing your particular interest in our specimen." Joshua kept his expression neutral, though his mind raced. "The structural integrity of this chamber directly impacts facility safety. It's part of my inspection mandate." "Indeed," Venn's vertical pupils narrowed. "And I suppose your suit's continuous scanning of our security systems is also part of that mandate." Andaria stood silent in her chains, but her eyes blazed with concern as they met Joshua's. He could almost feel her willing him to run, to save himself. Instead, he moved closer to her, placing himself between the guards and the chained Titan. "You know what you're doing is wrong," Joshua said, his voice hard. "She's a sentient being, not property." "Wrong?" Venn laughed, a harsh sound like grinding stones. "Commander, surely you understand that conventional morality has no place in frontier development. The consortium's profits mean nothing compared to basic sapient rights," Joshua cut him off. "The Earth Defense Force will do nothing," Venn finished, "because officially, you're about to have a tragic accident during your inspection. Quite careless, really, getting too close to an aggressive specimen." The guards raised their weapons. Joshua's combat suit registered multiple targeting locks. Behind him, Andaria tensed, her chains crackling with energy. "I'm sorry, little warrior," she whispered. "They knew. They've always known." "Don't be sorry," Joshua replied softly. Then louder. "Director Ven, I should mention one thing." "Oh?" The Saurian's tone was amused. "And what's that?" Joshua smiled. "I lied about the maintenance cycle." The chamber plunged into darkness as every power system simultaneously failed. Joshua's suit switched to combat mode, its enhanced sensors painting the room in sharp relief. The guards' targeting systems, calibrated for normal lighting, went wild. "It's actually scheduled for now." Chaos erupted. The energy chains holding Andaria flickered and died. Guards fired blindly, their shots going wide in the darkness. Joshua's combat suit launched a barrage of flashbangs, further disorienting their attackers. Andrea moved with shocking speed for her size, sweeping her massive arm through the darkness to scatter the guards like toys. Ven shouted orders, but his voice was drowned out by the sound of rending metal as Andaria tore one of the restraining columns from its moorings and hurled it across the chamber. "Joshua!" she called. "The ceiling! It's unstable!" He was already moving, his suit's sensors confirming her warning. The chamber had been built to contain a Titan strength with the help of energy fields. Without them, the physical structure was compromising rapidly. "Time to go!" Joshua activated his suit's emergency protocols. "Andaria, can you—" His words cut off as she scooped him up in one massive hand, cradling him protectively against her chest as she charged toward the chamber's far wall. The sensation of being held by her, feeling the raw power in her movements, sent a thrill through him despite the danger. "Hold tight, little warrior," she said, and then she was running, smashing through walls like they were paper. Alarms blared throughout the facility. Security forces scrambled to respond, but they were too slow, too small to stop a free Titan. They burst into the main mining tunnel, a vast shaft that led to the surface. Andaria's stride ate up the distance as falling rocks and debris rained down behind them. Joshua's suit registered weapons fire, but nothing heavy enough to threaten either of them. "The shuttle bay is 3 levels up," Joshua said, consulting his suit's map. "We can—" "No time!" Andaria's voice rumbled through her chest against him. "They'll have it locked down, but I have a better idea." She adjusted her course, heading for what looked like a solid rock wall. Joshua's sensors showed what she had already known. It was a thin barrier covering an old lava tube that led straight to the surface. "This might be uncomfortable," she warned, tightening her grip on him. "I trust you," he replied simply. Andaria smiled, then lowered her shoulder and charged. The barrier shattered, revealing a natural chimney stretching up into darkness. Without hesitation, she began to climb, her powerful limbs finding purchase in the rough stone. Behind them, the facility's structure continued to collapse, sealing their pursuers below. Joshua's suit registered multiple explosions as power conduits overloaded. The entire operation was falling apart. "They'll send ships after us," he said as they neared the surface. "Let them try." Andaria's voice held a fierce joy. "I've spent too long in chains. Never again." They emerged under twin moons, the night air sweet with freedom. Andaria stood to her full height, still holding Joshua close, and surveyed the landscape. In the distance, warning sirens wailed. "We need to move," Joshua said. "My suit can mask our heat signature, but—" "First," Andaria interrupted, bringing him up to eye level. "I need to do something." Before he could respond, she pressed her massive lips gently against his body in what could only be described as a kiss. The sensation was overwhelming, soft, warm, and filled with more emotion than words could express. "Thank you," she whispered as she pulled back, "for seeing me, for daring to care." Joshua reached out to touch her face, his armored hand tiny against her violet skin. "How could I not? You're the most amazing being I've ever met." A distant roar made them both look up. Security ships were launching from the facility's hangars. "Ready to show them what a Titan and a human can do together?" Andaria asked, her eyes glowing with challenge. Joshua grinned. "Lead the way, beautiful." She turned and ran, each stride covering enormous distance, as the first shots from their pursuers lit up the night sky. But neither of them felt fear. They had found something stronger than fear. They had found each other. After hours of relentless pursuit, Joshua and Andaria found sanctuary in a vast cave system deep within the planet's crystalline mountains. The natural formation was large enough to accommodate Andaria's impressive height, while the mineral deposits in the surrounding rock helped mask their presence from scanning systems. Joshua's combat suit had sustained minor damage during their escape, and he was working on repairs when he noticed Andaria watching him intently. She sat with her back against the cave wall, her luminous eyes following his every movement. "You're staring," he said, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "You humans are fascinating," she replied, her voice soft and melodious in the cave's acoustics. "So small, yet so perfectly formed. Every movement, precise, efficient." She leaned forward slightly. "I've been wondering something, little warrior." "What's that?" Joshua set aside his tools, giving her his full attention. "Among my people, size was never a barrier to connection." Her violet skin seemed to shimmer in the dim light. "We valued the spirit, the essence of a being, above all physical considerations." Joshua's heart rate increased noticeably. "Are you saying what I think you're saying?" "I'm saying that I've never met anyone like you, Joshua Sterling." She extended her hand, palm up, inviting him to approach. "Someone who saw past my size, past what others called monstrous, to who I truly am." He walked to her without hesitation, placing his hand against her palm. The size difference was staggering. His entire hand barely covered a fraction of one of her fingers. Yet somehow, it felt right. "You're not a monster," he said firmly. "You never were. You're beautiful, intelligent, and stronger than anyone I've ever known, both physically and spiritually." Andaria's free hand moved to gently caress his back with one finger, sending shivers through his body. "Then show me," she whispered. "Show me how a human warrior loves." What followed was a discovery of new possibilities, of ways that two beings from vastly different worlds could share intimacy and passion. Their size difference presented unique challenges, but they approached each with creativity and tender patience. Joshua's combat suit, designed for adaptability in alien environments, proved unexpectedly useful in ways its designers had surely never intended. Throughout their exploration, they maintained a constant dialogue of soft words and gentle reassurances. Andaria was incredibly careful with her strength. While Joshua showed her that size truly didn't matter when it came to bringing pleasure, they found ways to bridge their physical differences through determination and genuine affection. Hours later, they lay together, Andaria curled protectively around Joshua's much smaller form. Her fingers traced patterns on his armor as they talked about everything and nothing. "I never expected this," she admitted. "When they first captured me, I thought I would die in chains, the last of my kind. Then you came, and suddenly..." She paused, searching for words. "Suddenly the universe didn't seem so empty anymore?" Joshua suggested, running his hand along her violet skin. "Yes," she smiled down at him. "Exactly that. You humans have such a gift for understanding emotions, for seeing possibilities where others see only obstacles. It's one of our better qualities, some of our saying, and Bonet agreed, along with our stubbornness and inability to accept limitations. Those qualities seem to have served us well." Her eyes sparkled with mischief. "Though I must admit, I'm curious about something else." "What's that? Are all human males so inventive, or are you special even among your own kind?" Joshua laughed, the sound echoing through the cave. "I'd say it's a combination of natural human adaptability and personal motivation. You're quite inspiring." Their playful moment was interrupted by an alert from Joshua's suit sensors. Ships were passing overhead. Search parties, no doubt. "They're still looking for us," Andaria said, her voice hardening. "They won't give up easily." "No," Joshua agreed, sitting up. "But neither will we. I've been thinking about our next move. The consortium will have locked down all official spaceports, but I know about some less reputable options. If we can..." He stopped as Andaria suddenly tensed, her hand moving to her abdomen. "What is it?" he asked, concerned. "Are you hurt?" "No," she said slowly, wonder creeping into her voice. "No, I'm not hurt at all, but I feel different." Her luminous eyes met his, filled with amazement. "Joshua, I think something impossible has happened." His suit's medical scanners confirmed what they both suspected. Their intimate encounter had resulted in conception. Somehow, despite their vast physical differences, their genetic codes had found compatibility. "A child," Andaria whispered, tears of joy forming in her eyes. "A true miracle. The first new Titan in generations, and half human." Joshua moved closer, placing his hand over where their child was growing. "Not impossible," he corrected gently, "just unprecedented. Like everything else about us." She laughed softly. "The consortium feared me as a monster, kept me in chains. But you saw beyond that, dared to touch me, to love me, and now we're going to show the galaxy what happens when you underestimate both Titans and humans," Joshua finished. "But first, we need to get you, both of you, somewhere safe." Andaria's protective instincts, already strong, had intensified with the knowledge of her pregnancy. She gathered Joshua closer, her massive form curling around him. "Lead the way, little warrior. I trust you with more than just my life now." As they began planning their escape from the planet, both knew that their challenges were far from over. But they had each other, and soon they would have even more to fight for. The universe might not be ready for a human-Titan hybrid, but the universe would have to adapt, just as they had adapted to find love across the boundaries of size and species. Dawn broke over Nexus 9's crystalline mountains, painting the sky in shades of amber and violet that reminded Joshua of Andaria's skin. They needed to move soon. The consortium's search patterns were becoming more systematic, closing in on their location. "The nearest independent spaceport is in the Crimson Wastes," Joshua explained, projecting a map from his suit's systems. "It's run by smugglers who don't ask questions, as long as you can pay." Andaria studied the projection, one hand resting protectively over her abdomen. The knowledge of their growing child had intensified their bond, adding new urgency to their need for escape. "The terrain is challenging," she observed, "but the real problem will be finding transport large enough for me." "Already solved." Joshua's beard couldn't hide his confident grin. "There's a decommissioned cargo hauler there, the St. Elmo's Fire. She was designed to transport space whales. If anyone can accommodate a Titan..." "Clever little warrior." Andaria reached down to caress his armored form with one finger. "Though I'm beginning to think that a little is a relative term given your impressive capabilities." Joshua felt heat rise to his face, remembering their passionate exploration of those capabilities the previous night. "You bring out the best in me." Their playful moment was interrupted by the cave's early warning system, modified from Joshua's suit sensors. Multiple vehicles were approaching from the south. "Time to go," Joshua said, quickly gathering their few supplies. "They're using thermal imaging now. The caves won't hide us much longer." Andaria scooped him up with practiced gentleness, placing him in what had become his preferred position against her chest. "Then let's give them something to chase." They emerged from the cave into morning light, and Andaria's massive form moved with surprising grace as she navigated the treacherous mountain terrain. Her bare feet found purchase where vehicles would struggle, allowing them to take routes their pursuers couldn't follow. "Security forces are deploying from 3 directions," Joshua reported, monitoring his suit's sensors. "But they're leaving the eastern approach relatively light. They don't think we'd head toward the wastes." "Their mistake." Andaria's stride lengthened as they reached more level ground. "Though I must admit, the name Crimson Wastes doesn't sound particularly welcoming. It's actually quite beautiful, in a deadly sort of way." Joshua adjusted his position as she jumped a narrow canyon. "The red sand contains traces of psychoactive minerals. Most species can't cross it without heavy shielding. But my suit can protect me, and your Titan physiology should be naturally resistant." "Should be?" She raised an eyebrow, but her tone was teasing. "Such confidence in my abilities." "Always." He ran an armored hand along her skin, marveling at how something so powerful could feel so silk smooth. "You're the strongest being I've ever known, in every way that matters." Their eyes met, and for a moment the danger fell away. The connection between them hummed like a living thing, transcending their physical differences. Then reality intruded as weapons fire lit up the sky behind them. "Gunships," Joshua warned. 3 of them, coming in fast." Andaria's response was to increase her speed, her powerful legs eating up the distance. The terrain began to change, rocky outcrops giving way to red dunes that stretched to the horizon. The sand shifted beneath her feet, but she adapted quickly, using her size to her advantage. The gunships opened fire, but their targeting systems struggled with the psychoactive interference from the sand. Most shots went wide, and those that did hit glanced off Andaria's naturally resilient skin. "They're falling back," Joshua reported after several minutes of pursuit. "The sand's affecting their engines. They can't risk flying too low." "Good." Andaria's breathing was steady despite their pace. "Because I think our child objects to all this running." Joshua's suit sensors confirmed elevated hormone levels. "We should rest. There's a rock formation ahead that will provide cover." They reached the shelter just as the twin suns reached their zenith. The heat was intense, but Andaria's body temperature regulation was far superior to any humans. She settled into a comfortable position, creating a protected space for Joshua against her body. "Tell me about Earth," she said softly as they waited out the worst of the heat. "About your home." "It's beautiful," he replied, relaxing against her. "Green and blue, with white clouds and endless oceans. Nothing like this place." He paused, considering, "Though maybe not as beautiful as certain violet-skinned giants I know." Her laughter rumbled through her chest. "Flatterer? But I meant, would they accept us there? Accept this?" She gestured to her abdomen. "Earth has a long history of adapting to the unexpected." He placed his hand over hers. "Humans especially. We're remarkably good at accepting what others call impossible. Like a human warrior loving a titan." "Exactly like that." He smiled up at her. "Though in my case, it wasn't even a choice. From the moment I saw past what they called monstrous, saw the real you, everything else was inevitable." They shared another moment of intimate connection before Joshua's sensors demanded attention. Ground vehicles approaching from the west. They're using hover technology to cross the sand. "Then we should move." Andrea rose smoothly, keeping Joshua secure. "How much further to this spaceport of yours?" "About 40 kilometers. We should reach it by nightfall." He checked their heading. "The sand will get deeper, which will slow us down but make pursuit even harder." They set out again, finding a steady pace that balanced speed with Andaria's comfort. The pregnancy was progressing faster than human gestation, but slower than traditional Titan reproduction. Yet another way, their child was proving unique. As they traveled, they talked about the future, about finding a place where they could raise their child in peace, about the possibility of other surviving Titans, about building a life together that defied all conventional expectations. The twin suns began to painting the red sand in shades of deep crimson and gold. Ahead, lights flickered on the horizon. The independent spaceport, their first real chance at freedom. "Ready?" Joshua asked as they paused on the last dune. Andaria's response was to lean down and press her lips gently against his entire upper body, their own version of a kiss. "With you, my little warrior, always." They descended toward the spaceport, ready to face whatever challenges awaited. Behind them, their footprints in the red sand told a story of impossible love and unshakable determination. A story that was still being written. The independent spaceport sprawled across the crimson dunes like a collection of mismatched metal toys, its landing pads and hangars illuminated by harsh artificial light. Joshua and Andrea approached under cover of darkness, using the towering cargo containers for concealment. "The St. Elmo's fire should be in Hangar 7, Joshua whispered, consulting his suit's data. "But something's wrong. Security's too heavy for a smuggler's port." Andaria's luminous eyes narrowed as she surveyed the scene. "The consortium's people are here. I can smell their fear. They know what a free Titan can do." Despite the tension, Joshua couldn't help but smile. "They fear you because they don't understand you. All they see is size and strength. While you saw beyond that from the first moment." She brushed her fingertip along his armored chest. "My fearless little warrior." Their tender moment was interrupted by movement at the port's main gate. A convoy of heavily armed vehicles rolled in, led by a familiar scaled figure. "Director Van," Joshua growled. "He's persistent, I'll give him that." "He's desperate," Andaria corrected. "Look at his posture. He knows his career is finished if we escape." She cradled her abdomen protectively. "Especially now that we carry something unprecedented." Joshua's combat suit detected increased chatter on security frequencies. "They're setting up a perimeter. We need to move fast." He studied the layout, formulating a plan. The hangar's automated systems are still accepting standard override codes. If I can reach the control room... No. Andaria's voice was firm. We do this together. I won't risk losing you. They'll be expecting that. They'll have weapons calibrated for your size. Then we'll give them something unexpected. A mischievous glint appeared in her eye. They fear the monster, yes? Let's show them why. Before Joshua could respond, Andaria stepped out from behind the cargo containers. Her violet skin seemed to glow in the artificial light as she drew herself up to her full height. Every guard in view froze, weapons trembling in their hands. I am Andaria of the Titans, her voice boomed across the spaceport. You call me monster, but I am so much more. I am the last daughter of a dying race. I am a mother-to-be, and I am done hiding. She strode forward with deliberate grace. The guards opened fire, but their shots seemed to dissipate against her skin. Joshua's suit sensors confirmed what he'd suspected. Their weapons were set for maximum pain, not lethal force. They wanted to recapture, not kill, their valuable specimen. Their mistake. Using the distraction, Joshua activated his suit's stealth systems and sprinted toward the control room. Behind him, Andaria continued her advance, each step causing tremors through the metal decking. Director Venn, she called out, you chained me, displayed me, thought you could own me, but you never saw me, not like he did. Joshua reached the control room, dispatching 2 guards with quick, efficient strikes. His fingers flew over the controls, initiating emergency protocols. Throughout the port, blast doors began closing, isolating sections of the facility. You fear what you don't understand, Andaria continued, her voice carrying easily over the chaos. But he dared to know me, to touch me, to love me. Ven's voice crackled over the port's speakers. Stand down, specimen. You're surrounded. Am I? Andaria smiled, and even hardened mercenaries stepped back. Look again. On cue, Joshua triggered the port's fire suppression systems. Dense fog filled the landing areas, cutting visibility to 0. In the confusion, Andaria moved with surprising stealth for her size, making her way toward Hangar 7. Andaria, status? Joshua called through their private comm link. Missing you already, little warrior? Her voice was playful despite the situation, though I must admit, making them tremble is somewhat satisfying. Save some for me. He finished the startup sequence for the St. Elmo's fire. Hangar doors opening in 30 seconds. A massive explosion rocked the facility. Through the clearing fog, Joshua saw Director Venn deploying some kind of energy weapon, one definitely not meant for simple recapture. Andaria, he switched to external speakers. They're done playing nice. So am I. Her response was followed by the sound of rending metal as she tore a fuel tank from its moorings and hurled it toward the consortium forces. The resulting explosion sent vehicles in troop scattering. Joshua sprinted from the control room toward Hangar 7, his suit's enhanced speed pushing him to his limits. He arrived just as Andaria reached the massive doors. Your chariot awaits, my lady, he said, triggering the final override. The St. Elmo's fire was a monster of a ship, designed to transport the largest known spacefaring creatures. Its cargo hold could easily accommodate Andaria, though the living quarters would need creative modification. How romantic, she teased, carefully picking him up. Though I hope you'll be sharing these quarters with me. Try to stop me. He pressed his hand against her chest, feeling her powerful heartbeat. Now let's show them what happens when you underestimate both humans and Titans. They boarded just as consortium forces breached the hangar. The ship's ancient engines roared to life, responding to Joshua's commands through his suit's interface. Emergency launches weren't exactly legal, but neither was holding a sentient being captive. Hold on! Joshua engaged the main drives. The St. Elmo's fire lifted off with surprising grace for its size, climbing through Nexus 9's atmosphere as weapons fire lit up the sky around them. Andaria stood behind him in the oversized bridge, one hand steadying herself on the reinforced ceiling, the other resting on her abdomen. They're still pursuing, not for long. Joshua plotted a course through the system's asteroid belt. This old girl might be slow, but she's tough, and I'm betting those fancy consortium ships aren't rated for heavy debris fields. He was right. One by one, their pursuers fell back, rather than risk their ships in the treacherous asteroids. Soon they were alone among the stars. Free, Andaria breathed, the word carrying years of longing. Truly free. Joshua engaged the autopilot and stood, turning to face her. Even in the ship's massive bridge, she had to stoop slightly, but her eyes shone with joy. "Where to now?" she asked softly. "Anywhere we want." He reached up to touch her leg, marveling as always at how something so powerful could feel so silk smooth. "Though I know a few places where size isn't an issue and questions aren't asked, places where we can prepare for our little miracle." And Daria lowered herself carefully to sit on the deck, bringing her face closer to his level. "Our miracle, a child of two worlds, born of a love that shouldn't have been possible." She smiled. "Rather like its father, defying expectations at every turn. And its mother, proving that true beauty lies in the soul, not the surface." Joshua stepped forward into her gentle embrace. "They called you monster, but I saw your heart and touched it," she whispered, drawing him closer, "in every way that matters." The St. Elmo's fire carried them deeper into space, leaving Nexus 9 and its prejudices behind. They had won their freedom, but both knew this was just the beginning of their journey. A journey that would show the galaxy that love truly knows no bounds. 3 months after their escape from Nexus 9, the St. Elmo's fire drifted in orbit around a pristine garden world in the Outer Rim. Joshua had modified the massive cargo hold into a comfortable living space for Inderia, whose pregnancy had progressed remarkably well despite its unprecedented nature. The ship's bridge, designed to accommodate various species, had become their favorite spot for watching the sunset over the planet's emerald oceans. Andariah sat cross-legged on the reinforced deck while Joshua worked at the controls, his combat suit now modified for civilian use, but still maintaining its protective capabilities. "The terraforming drones are making good progress," he reported, studying the readouts. "Another month and the valley will be ready for construction." Indaria smiled, running her hand over her swollen abdomen. "Our little one is eager to see it. She moves more whenever you talk about our future home." "She?" Joshua raised an eyebrow, his dark beard not hiding his grin. "You sound certain." "A mother knows." Her luminous eyes sparkled with mischief. "Though I suppose a father's intuition shouldn't be discounted." He left the console to join her, and she gently scooped him up to her eye level. The gesture had become natural, an expression of intimacy that transcended their size difference. "I've been thinking," Joshua said, placing his hand against her violet skin, "about what you told me in those first days, about how everyone saw a monster until you dared to see me," she finished softly. "To touch me, to love me. Yes, but it's more than that." He met her gaze with intensity. "They feared you because they couldn't understand how something so powerful could be gentle. They couldn't imagine that true strength lies in choosing kindness, despite having the power to do otherwise." Indaria's free hand came up to cradle him protectively. "You taught me that, my little warrior. When you first approached me in that chamber, showing no fear." "I wasn't fearless," he admitted with a chuckle. "I was terrified, but not of you, of failing to do what was right." Their moment was interrupted by a flutter of movement beneath Andaria's skin. Both of them laughed as their unborn child made her presence known. "She's strong," Andaria said proudly, "like her father." "And beautiful," Joshua countered, "like her mother." The ship's sensors chimed, indicating an incoming transmission. Joshua reluctantly returned to the console, but his tension eased when he saw the source. "It's from Earth Command," he said, opening the channel. "They've reviewed our case. The official ruling just came through." And Daria straightened, her expression guarded. They had spent weeks negotiating with various authorities, arguing for recognition of their union and their child's rights. Joshua read quickly, then broke into a broad smile. "We won. Full citizenship rights for you and our daughter. The consortium's claims have been completely rejected, and..." He paused for effect. "They're offering me a new position. Diplomatic liaison for human-Titan relations. But I'm the last..." Andrea began, then understood. "They're thinking of the future, of our child and any others who might follow." "Exactly. Earth Command sees the potential in our union, not just for us, but for both our peoples." He returned to her embrace. "They want to establish a sanctuary here, a place where size doesn't matter and love knows no bounds." Andaria's eyes filled with happy tears. From chains to freedom, from fear to acceptance, all because one human male dared to look past appearances. Speaking of looking past appearances, Joshua reached into his suit's storage compartment and withdrew a small box. There's a human tradition I'd like to share with you. Inside was a ring, sized for Andaria's finger, and crafted from an iridescent metal that seemed to capture starlight. I had it made from my suit's original armor plating, he explained. The same armor I wore when I first met you. Joshua? She whispered his name like a prayer. I know we've already shared more than most couples ever will, he continued, but I want to make it official in every way possible. Andaria of the Titans, will you marry me? Her answer was to bring him close for one of their unique kisses, her massive lips pressing gently against his entire upper body. When she pulled back, her smile outshone the stars. Yes, she said simply. 1,000 times yes. As if in approval, their daughter chose that moment to kick again, causing them both to laugh. The future stretched before them, full of challenges but also endless possibilities. The St. Elmo's fire continued its orbit, carrying its precious cargo. Not just cargo anymore, but a family. Below, the garden world awaited them, ready to be shaped into a home where their love could flourish and grow. A place where no one would be judged by their size or appearance. A sanctuary where their daughter could grow up proud of both her heritages. A testament to the truth that love sees beyond all barriers. You know, Joshua mused as they watched another sunset paint the sky in shades of purple and gold. They still talk about us in the spaceports, about the fearsome Titan and the human who dared to love her. Let them talk, Andaria replied, holding him close. Our story might help others find the courage to look beyond appearances, to touch what they fear, to love what they don't understand. Our story, he agreed, is just beginning. And as the stars emerged above their new home, a human and a Titan dreamed together of the future they would build. A future where love truly conquered all, where fear gave way to understanding, and where the only monsters were the ones in old stories told to children who would grow up knowing better. For in the end, it wasn't about size or strength or even courage. It was about seeing with the heart, about daring to reach out across the vast distances between souls. It was about love, in all its infinite, impossible, wonderful forms. And that was a force greater than any in the universe.